Join me today to talk about Halloween. This is the Geek Cabal channel. My name's Bobbie, and today we're going to be talking about John Carpenter's Halloween. If I've done everything correctly, this will be premiering on Halloween. So hopefully I get this edited in time. So, what is there to talk about with Halloween? Well, it is one of, if not my favorite horror movies. Definitely my favorite slasher. That's in the bag, but I think it's quite possibly my favorite horror movie. I've done some videos talking about the whole series. I'd have to go back and look and see if it includes the final, well, for now, final movie, because I hear they're already working on another one. Halloween Ends. And I'll link to those in the description or up here or something. But I figured, it's Halloween, and so we're going to talk about Halloween. Now, the movie itself, I imagine most of you watching this probably know the plot, or, if not, watch one of the other videos. In brief, it's about Michael Myers, who kills his older sister on Halloween night whenever he's a little kid, goes to an insane asylum where he's looked over by Dr. Loomis. Dr. Loomis eventually realizes that he's not dealing with a child, he's dealing with pure evil. And eventually, several years later, he escapes to go back home on Haddonfield, to go back home to Haddonfield on Halloween night. Well, eventually it's Halloween night. And he kills some people. So, for a movie that's like a major staple of the horror genre, this movie has a very low body count. I think it's like, I want to say 5 people, because it'd be Michael's sister towards the beginning. There's a mechanic, tow truck driver that he takes out off screen, but we see his body. And then the 3 people in the house across the street from Laurie. Yeah, I think that's it. I think it's just those 5 people. Now, why does this movie work? Why did it work so well? Why did it basically spawn the slasher genre? Which it's not the first slasher movie. Okay, I mean, even within the decade it came out, 'cause it came out in '79. Texas Chainsaw Massacre came out in '74. So there was already another slasher, homicidal maniac type movie out there that was really popular. But that movie didn't spawn a decade and a half of other movies trying to imitate it. And then a bunch of sequels of its own. Halloween did. Halloween had next to no budget, and it just worked because Michael Myers is creepy. Michael Myers has no personality. He just is. He's just this slow, lumbering killer. And that's because he, metaphorically, represents death. And I know, a lot of killers do, because that's what they do. But it's a little more literal here in that that's why he's slow. That's why he's lumbering. But that's why he wins. That's why no matter how fast anyone else is, he does catch up to them. Because death catches up to all of us. He is inevitability. Kind of like Thanos. And so that's also why the movie ends the way it does. It was not ended that way to create a sequel. It ends with Loomis shooting him. He falls out of the second-story window into the backyard. And then Loomis goes and checks on Laurie. And then he goes back, and he's gone. And again, it's because he's the personification of death. And you can't kill death. So. But, so from those humble beginnings, an entire franchise was spawned. that now has, let's see, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 entries, if my math is correct. And it's very sprawling. And also, unlike a lot of franchises, it's kind of like a choose-your-own-adventure, because you've got choices as to where the story goes. This is a somewhat unique feature. So, to better explain that, what I mean is, the movies have had, like, internal reboots, an actual reboot, and just a few other things. So, you have a couple different paths you can take. Now, obviously, you can get off the ride at any point, so I'm not going to say, well, you could just watch the first one or just the second one. I'm only going to make mention of that here towards the beginning because there's a logical end point in one of them, and that would be the second one. So, the first one is massively successful. So much so, that's why the Friday the 13th series even exists. Because someone else in Hollywood was like, hey, this whole slasher thing really worked out. Copy the formula and deliver me a movie about a killer killing people. And that's where Friday the 13th was born. And that's a whole other story there. But, yeah, and you'll notice a few similarities. Now, Friday the 13th is gorier. Because there's not a lot of blood in Halloween. Because Michael Myers stabs his sister at the beginning, but it's like seen through a mask, and that was a big feature. There were already other movies, Italian horror movies, where you see things through the eyes of the killer. This was not a huge concept at the time. Now, I don't know if other earlier movies already pioneered this, but I do know that Halloween kind of like brought it out in the open, because you see various things through Michael's eyes, through his, you see things from his perspective. So you see that's how he kills his sister at the beginning with a knife, but you don't see like a bunch of blood spraying around everywhere. Then you don't see him kill the mechanic. The first girl that he kills, he chokes to death. And then the guy that he kills, he stabs, but there's not a lot of blood. And then he chokes the other girl to death. So it's not a very bloody movie. That's why they were able to make a TV version of the first movie. Whenever they filmed the second movie, they filmed new scenes to put in to replace some other scenes and to fill a few things out. And I think to help line up with what was going to be revealed in the second movie, if I recall correctly. It's one of the only TV edits that I know of that has its own DVD release. And I think some versions have finally combined everything into one, but I'm not 100% certain on that. And like with the other movies I've talked about, if I can find links on Amazon of these, there'll be affiliate links in the description and all that. And, we appreciate any kind of thing you folks do there, but all of these movies I believe are streaming somewhere at the moment. So, the first movie, huge success. John Carpenter did not intend on making a sequel. However, money. And the producer, Mustafa Akkad, was like, we're going to make a sequel. John was like, okay, I'm on board, but we're going to give this one a more definitive ending. And he also was able to cut loose on the death scenes. The gore factor goes up tremendously in the second movie, because the second movie features several more fatalities in considerably more gruesome manners, because Michael just gets let loose on a bunch of people in a hospital. And you discover through the movie that, it picks up right where the other movie stops. So the two movies are essentially one narrative. And the sheriff's deputies, because the sheriff's daughter was killed, so he's kind of out of action after the first couple minutes, so his deputies take over. And Dr. Loomis are trying to find Michael because he's not dead. He goes and kills some rando teenager, and which is another thing that kind of separates him from some of these other slashers. Michael kills kills most people he comes across. Like, there's no rhyme or reason to what he does. Like, Jason, if you're not in Crystal Lake, he's probably not coming after you. Unless you killed his mom, in which case then he'll track you down. Like he does in the very beginning of Friday the 13th Part 2. But otherwise, like, in Friday the 13th Part 8, it's Jason takes Manhattan. Or goes to Manhattan. I don't remember the exact title. But Jason goes to Manhattan, okay? So, he's just following the people from Crystal Lake. He doesn't kill the numerous other people he comes across in Times Square. He actually, like, just scares them off and then keeps pursuing and only kills a couple of people that get directly in his way. Michael Myers would just be stabbing the crap out of everyone he comes across because he is just evil. Just pure malevolence. That's all that drives him. And that's different than the others. You know, like, Chucky seems to kill a lot of people just for the shits and giggles. But like Freddy, he's got to target teenagers. Doesn't really go after adults. And so, you know, his pool of potential victims is quite limited. So, that's also why overall Michael Myers has a significantly higher body count across his movies than the other two main slashers, which are Freddy and Jason. And because, again, they're limited. You know, Jason's limited by geography, and Freddy's limited by age range. And the two of them have a lot of people that escape. Michael Myers has, like, Laurie Strode, who, in at least one iteration, he eventually kills. So, you know. So anyway, Laurie gets taken to the hospital in the second one, and so Michael is trying to finish the job. And once he gets there, just starts taking people out until he can try to find her. And then the movie ends with him and Dr. Loomis in an OR room. Laurie has escaped, and they've turned on they've opened up like the oxygen and the ether valve, so the room is filling full of combustible gas. And Loomis pulls out a lighter, flicks it, and blows up part of the hospital. And Michael comes shambling out on fire and falls over, just burning and cooking. So he's clearly dead. And that should have been the end. You know, that's why Carpenter is involved, so that they could end it there, have a more definitive ending than him just, you know, not being on the ground. Whenever Loomis thinks he should be dead on the ground. Here, like, this was a situation that should have killed him and Loomis. And I've seen some things where Donald Pleasance actually encouraged Carpenter to take out things about Loomis's background, so that he also seems like just this lunatic hell-bent on this one thing at the cost of everything else. You know, we don't know anything about his background, wife, kids, nothing, we don't know. He's single-mindedly focused on Michael Myers, the same way Myers is single-mindedly focused on killing people. And, you know, it adds to the ambiance and everything in the movie, along with the music, which can't be understated, that, like, that is the horror movie theme. So, 2 is a logical endpoint, because that's where Carpenter intended on ending things. That's where clearly you could just say, this is it, this is the definitive ending. Laurie survives, but Loomis and Myers got blown up and, you know, burned, and they're both dead. You know, you could just go with that, and, you know, you'd be done with things. Or you could continue the adventure. Now, at this point, you would have 2 options. You can go with the branch that goes through numbers 4, 5, and 6, and I'll explain why we skipped 3 here in a minute. Or you could go to 7 and 8. Or you could go 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and just assume that Laurie Strode is a really terrible mother. But I don't know if you want to go that route. So 4, 5, and 6 assume that Laurie had a daughter and then died. And so it's Michael's coming after her. He's been dormant somewhere for a while. 4, it's, you know, 4 and 5 and 6. I'm not going to say they're the greatest movies. I like them because I like the franchise. but there's definitely a decline in quality. 6 sees a little bit of a bump in like production quality, and there's some money and some other stars and things like that. 4 sees Michael just murdering people all over town, and then takes out the whole sheriff's department. So then Loomis forms a posse, and they just kind of start roaming trying to find him. They accidentally kill a few people. Then they confront him at a mine shaft outside of town. He gets all shot up, falls down the mine shaft. That's where the movie ends. 5 picks up right there, except then you see them dynamite the mine shaft, but Michael crawls out the other end before that happens and falls into the river, and then some homeless guy like tends to him for a year. Then he reanimates, kills the homeless guy for his troubles, and then, as he does, and then goes back on the warpath trying to kill Laurie's daughter, who now has like a weird psychic connection with him. And somewhere in here is where they begin to start trying to build up the mythology, trying to say that no, he's not just a man, that he is definitely possessed by something, some burning rage, some evil, and it has something to do with like Celtic mythology and ruins and druids and all that kind of stuff, to try to explain why he's capable of these superhuman feats. Because he should be dead. Like all the bullets he took, well, should be dead after part 2, but all the bullets he took at the end of part 4 should have probably killed him. So, but if he's not a normal man, then okay. So part 5 sees him captured by the police. And then the movie ends with someone going in and shooting up the police department, blowing it up, and releasing him. And then in 6 you find out who was involved in that and why. And essentially they want to control Michael, or like the next version of him, to use as a weapon or something. And similar to everyone that tries to control the alien in the movie Aliens, that comes back to bite them in the ass whenever Michael shows up and murders all of them. Then he kills Loomis at the end of this one. And I think that had to do with, they did that because Donald Pleasance died in real life. So that's where one branch of the movies ends. And it just kind of stops there. Then you have 7 and 8, which are known as H2O and Resurrection. And the H2O, it's not for water, it's because it's the 20th anniversary. That one picks up, assuming that 1 and 2 took place. And then, this is 20 years later, Laurie has got a new identity, lives out in California, way away from Haddonfield, which is in Illinois, although it's filmed in California. And then she's been living as a school teacher at a private school. She's got a son. And then her brother comes calling. And it does a pretty good job of like showing just how much that would wreck your life. And just this idea that always wondering if he's out there somewhere. And, you know, your son constantly being like, I haven't experienced these things. You're a crazy person. Let me go. Your brother is dead. Oh, yeah, by the way, back in part 2, they said that she was his sister. So, yeah. So, that one ends with her seeming to end things. She ends up with him, like, pinned between a fallen tree and an ambulance, and she lops his head off with an axe. But then, you know, money. So they made part 8, where it's revealed that Michael actually, like, switched places with somebody, so she killed an innocent guy. Now she's in an insane asylum because she couldn't live with that fact. And what she's really doing is waiting, knowing that Michael is going to come for her. And he does. He kills her at the beginning of the movie. And then goes on to wreck the day of some people wanting to film a reality TV show in his house, where he kills most of them. And then he himself does not die, even though he's burned up and electrocuted. That's where that branch of the timeline ends. Now, originally, 7 was supposed to take into account 4, 5, and 6. And there were scenes that were written in the script, but they ultimately were removed, and it was reshaped a little bit. So it doesn't really fit, again, unless you assume that Jamie Lee Curtis's character, Laurie, is just the worst mother ever and just abandoned her daughter to deal with Michael Myers and just like, well, peace out, I'm moving to California. Which, you can do that. Like, the movies don't not line up. It's just that they don't mention 4, 5, and 6 at all. So, then around this time, the franchise kind of laid low for a little bit. And then we had the spin-off, remake, whatever you want to call it, where Rob Zombie had his own 2 Halloween movies. Now, the first movie that he made is like a backstory to Michael Myers, so we see a lot more of him as a kid for like a good probably 20-25 minutes of movie, and then the rest of the movie is like a warp speed remake of John Carpenter's movie. Similar beats, basically the same people get killed. I think some more people get killed in this one. Yes, definitely more people get killed. This one's got a pretty high body count. You got, I think Tyler Mane played Michael Myers, so he's like big and buff. And there's some other horror movie alumni in that one. And Rob Zombie's wife, Sherry Moon Zombie, plays Michael's mother. And I don't remember the name of the girl who they recast to play Laurie. But, and you've got Malcolm McDowell plays Dr. Loomis. And, like Bill Moseley, who I mentioned back in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 review. He's in this. Danny Trejo. I don't know the woman's name, but she is she's in the Police Academy movies. The kind of strict blonde woman who's already with the police, who's overseeing the cadets. Again, I can't think of her real name, but she's in this as a prison guard. And a couple other people that you definitely recognize. But most of them get killed very shortly after you meet them, so it doesn't really matter. Then this one ended similar to the first one. And then this one spawned a sequel. Now, the sequel to this one is where everything just goes wildly off the rails. Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 starts off with the whole hospital thing, and you get to see Michael kill some people while the Moody Blues Nights in White Satin is playing. And then it turns out it's all just a dream that Laurie is having. She is living with the sheriff because the sheriff's daughter survived. Unlike the original, here she survives. Well, she survived the first movie. She gets killed in this one. Now, she is played by Danielle Harris, who plays Laurie's daughter in Halloween 4 and 5. And she's, even though she would have been in her 30s, I think, at that point, but because of her size and just her looks, she almost passes as a teenager. She's pretty short and has a very youthful appearance. But anyway, she's, definitely older than any person in high school would be at that point. And Brad Dourif plays the sheriff. So this one gets really weird. Laurie starts having weird visions. Michael, they take into account that, he's just been kind of living in the wilderness, so he's kind of got a big beard, and like half the mask is all fallen off and everything. And yeah, he just shows up, starts killing more people. And it ends with some kind of weird, like, Laurie embraces the insanity and sees like a vision of her mom and Michael as a young boy, and then Michael as he is now, and weird stuff. Like, I think Rob Zombie's just like, we're not making a part 3, so let's just go out on the total crazy note. And, hey, it works for some people. Yeah, so you have that one. Then, a more recent development is the string of 3 more recent movies, which the first one is unimaginatively just known as Halloween, and then Halloween Kills, and then Halloween Ends. Now, these all assume that the first movie, John Carpenter's movie, took place, not the rest of them. They reference a thing brought up in the others, where they talk about Laurie being Michael's sister, and they say that was just a rumor or something, and that she's not. She's just has the unfortunate distinction of not being killed by him, and she's convinced that he will come back because he's in prison. And he gets out and goes on a killing spree. And this one, he literally starts at like one end of a street and just goes from like house to house through like 2 or 3 houses, just kills everyone he comes across. So this is like total murder machine Michael Myers in this one. And eventually finds his way to Laurie's house. Only Laurie has been preparing all this time. So her house is like an elaborate death trap, and she ends up trapping him in the basement and then pulling the switch that sets the whole house on fire. So then they leave, and you're led to believe that he's burning. Well, I say that because it has a shot of him standing there on the stairs with the spikes that are preventing him from leaving, looking up, everything around is burning, cuts the outside, cuts back inside, he's gone. So even that movie with its end told you that this isn't the end. So in Halloween Kills, you see that the fire department shows up to put out the fire. And he was hiding in like a cubbyhole, and once a firefighter falls through the floor, he kills him, kills his partner, then goes upstairs and uses all kinds of firefighting implements to kill the rest of the firefighters. And then the townsfolk start going crazy trying to find him, kill an innocent guy. Then a bunch of people get killed. And then they think they've got him, like they all surround him and start beating the crap out of him and stabbing him and everything. And then they stop. And that was their fatal mistake, because then he stands back up and kills all of them. And that's just kind of where the movie ends. You see some flashbacks where the sheriff, one of his deputies, is talking about how he could have ended it, but he didn't. He stopped Loomis from just shooting Michael and killing him. We get a CGI Donald Pleasance in there, because, again, he's been dead for quite a while. And then you have Halloween Ends, where he kind of metaphorically passes on the torch, but then the other guy doesn't have like what it takes, so he kills him and finishes the rampage himself. But then he gets finished off by Laurie, and then they kind of drag him through the street and throw him into an industrial grinder, and he's definitely dead. So I have no idea where the next movie is starting from. And then you have Halloween 3, which is just off on its own. Because after 2, Carpenter, he didn't want any part of it as far as Myers. And so they were going to take the name and use it like as a brand for like an anthology kind of series. So it all just kind of tie back into Halloween, like, you know, All Hallows Eve, you know, Samhain, Samhain, whatever you want to call it. And so the third one involved stealing a rock from Stonehenge to take bits and pieces of it to put into the medallion that's on the Silver Shamrock Halloween masks that the kids are buying, that they're then going to transmit a signal on Halloween during a movie, the movie being Halloween, the first movie, and which is how they're able to reverse engineer like some of the songs into the movie, one in particular. And this will cause a magic effect which will kill the children and cause like bugs and snakes and stuff to pour out of their skulls. Oh, and the bad guy also has human-like robots. This movie is just pure batshit insanity from beginning to end, and I love every minute of it. I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, Halloween 3. I'm like, no, Halloween 3 is awesome, because it is awesome. So, yeah, and Tom Atkins is our main guy in that one. John Carpenter did the music for this one, and then this one kind of sucked, and so Mustafa Akkad's like, all right, bring back Myers, and that's when they made part 4, and John Carpenter totally checked out until the newer movies, where he was kind of on board, I think as a producer, if I remember right, you know, because he wanted to do, you know, if I were going to redo them, here's what we do kind of stuff. So, that is the life and times of Michael Myers, the various ways you can view the franchise, the one weirdo movie that doesn't even have him in it, and yeah, that's a lot of that is why Michael Myers is the king of the slasher genre, and the others are just pale imitations, because they are. Literally they are. So, you know, there's no jokes like Freddy, there's no brooding over killing his mother, and or maybe he's a zombie after part 6 that Jason has. He's just relentlessly evil and just kills everything he comes across, with very few exceptions. And That's it. That's just, that's terrifying. Just an unstoppable killing thing that you can't stop it. You can't. It's like the Terminator. You can't stop it. You can't reason with it. It's just going to do what it does, and you know that it's out there. And in the universe those movies take place in, like after the second one, people know about Michael Myers. Like, they know what happened in Haddonfield, and they know there's just this killing machine out there somewhere, just waiting to pop back up and murder everything in its path. Like in the Friday the 13th series, people know about the murders at Crystal Lake. If you're smart, you just don't go to Crystal Lake, because Jason generally doesn't venture outside of Crystal Lake. And, Nightmare on Elm Street, the townspeople eventually figure out, hey, if we just don't tell the kids about Freddy Krueger, belief in him will go away, and then he'll go away, because he's a demon. And that's the way these things work. And it kind of works. So, yeah. That's why there's, 6, 7, 8, 9, if I count Freddy vs. Jason on the Friday the 13th movies. Yeah, 6 in the main series. Final Nightmare, New Nightmare, and then the reboot with Jackie Earle Haley instead of Robert Englund, and then Freddy vs. Jason. And then there are Friday the 13th. There's 10 mainline movies. There's the reboot of Part 2, and then there's Freddy vs. Jason. So it's 12 of those. Versus 8, 9, 10, 13 Michael Myers movies, 14 Halloween movies, because again, Part 3 isn't Michael Myers. So, more movies, better movies in my opinion. They're not schlocky, they're not hokey, they're, played serious, because Michael Myers just kills people. Like, doesn't crack jokes, doesn't say a damn thing, just shows up and starts killing people. And that's creepy, that's why he is the boogeyman, or the Shape, as he is occasionally known. Typically, I think that's how they describe, I think it's what they called him in some of the credits. Then, folks probably know this, but fun little tidbit, the mask is a William Shatner mask, painted white with the eye holes slightly enlarged. So, William Shatner, face of evil. And, yeah. But, no, I can't really say enough about those movies. It's like I said, Halloween's my favorite slasher, and I do mean the first one. I think the second one's same level of quality. I liked the new ones. A lot of people give Halloween Ends crap because Michael isn't in it as much and it's some other guy. And I don't know. I thought it was interesting. It was an interesting take trying to explore the ramifications of a Michael Myers. It'd be 3 movies worth of just murdering people all over the place in this town, and how everyone deals with that. And, that would not just be rainbows and sunshine if you think he was dead. Like, that kind of thing would taint a town forever, And and Halloween Kills tried to explore that. It didn't succeed in a lot of ways, but it tried. It tried to be something different. And I applaud different, but sensible. I don't want different just for different's sake. I want different that makes sense. That to me made sense. Again, execution could have been better, I guess, but conceptually it was a good idea. It was worth a shot. And I'll see where the other one goes. It's coming out, which I think is slated to come out next year, maybe. I don't know if it's a continuation of those movies or if it's just its own new thing or what it's going to be. We'll see. But that's also why I give some points to Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 and providing a backstory for Myers in the first one, because it was new territory. It was something new. And something that, I don't know if the second one necessarily made sense because it went some weird directions. But, it was an idea. It was exploring. It wasn't just a rehash. So, I give it credit. Whereas if you watch the Friday the 13th movies, for instance, it's basically, Oh, someone's decided to reopen the camp. Oh, people are going to spend a few minutes talking about how that's probably really not a good idea because numerous people have been murdered in grisly fashion here. But let's give it a shot. Jason's probably really dead this time, right? So, yeah. That's why I love Jason X. One, it's just absolutely absurd. But two, it's new. Jason had never been to space before that. Oh man, Jason X. So, anyway, on this Halloween, if you're watching this the day I put this up, I figured I'd talk about my favorite horror movie, which also happens to line up with the day. So, this will not be the end of talking about horror movies for the channel here, just because this is October 31st. I've already filmed other horror movie things we're going to talk about. I'm going to get my nephew on here. We're going to talk a little bit about some other horror movies. And to me, horror movie season doesn't end. So, just because it's October 31st doesn't mean magically tomorrow I'll start watching Christmas movies. I love Christmas. I do not like just the constant barrage of Christmas music and movies and everything else. And I even like Christmas music. But good Lord, it doesn't need to start November 1st. Especially when they're like, oh, we'll put Halloween music on for like 3 days before Halloween. It's like, I get that there's not a lot of what I would call Halloween music, but like, we can do just a little bit better than that, can't we? Please, maybe. So, anyway, that's all I've really got to say on this one. I think so anyway. So let me know down in the comments what you think. Do you like the Halloween movies? Did you watch the other videos I did on the Halloween movies? Have you seen them all? Which track through them do you prefer? Do you have a favorite? Do you have a least favorite? Anything like that. Let me know down in the comments. Like, share, subscribe. Sharing and commenting are the things that really help us grow the channel, and I totally very much appreciate the folks who are doing that for us. Hopefully you stay on this journey we're all taking here. But yeah, other than that, just remember, whenever you're out trick-or-treating tonight, just ask yourself, was that the boogeyman?
As a matter of fact, it was.